Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessica Lang here from the Survivor's Guide to Life. This channel is all things related to trauma. I do a lot of focusing on sexual abuse, but also other topics around mental health. For the new year, I am doing a video every day relating to trauma and how trauma impacts different parts of your life. If you are enjoying what you're watching so far, please click that thumbs up button. I don't know why I did 2 thumbs up. It's only 1 thumbs up, but you can give me 2 thumbs up. I'll really appreciate it. And of course, please hit that subscribe button. Click the notification bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. And finally, go right ahead, go over to Instagram. Follow me on Instagram at Jessica_Lang_LMFT. I get to 10,000 followers, so I would love for you to be one of them. Okay, so no more shameless plugging. Now let's jump in and talk about today's topic. So for the past few videos, I have been really diving deep into the brain development, its functions, how trauma plays a role in it, and now we're going to culminate it with the top part of the brain, which is the cortex. Now, I've said it before, but hey, it's worth repeating again. The cortex begins developing during infancy and continues all the way until adulthood, where it pretty much finishes its development by the time you're 25, 26. So that's 25 typically for women, 26 typically for men. So if you are over the age of 30, you probably know that there's a significant difference between how you are now versus how you were when you were in your 20s. And now you know why. You have a fully developed frontal cortex, and so that and the role of the frontal cortex is to really curb some of those impulses that we've talked about with the brainstem. So that's also why you tend to be a little less impulsive the older you get. But now there are differences in this, and trauma actually plays a role in it, as well as mental health conditions such as ADHD or bipolar disorder, right? So those will also kind of play with those impulsive tendencies. But because this channel is talking specifically about trauma can actually impact the way parts of your brain function and the way that they develop. So as I said in earlier videos, the brain develops in a use-dependent fashion. And so if you have grown up in an environment where your stress response system is constantly being triggered and activated, then the parts of your brain that are responsible for activating the stress response system get strengthened and overdeveloped, because that's what you need. Whereas the other parts that your brain doesn't think you need or don't get activated as much tend to be underdeveloped. This doesn't mean you have brain damage or anything like that. It just means you have to target those specific areas to strengthen them with repeated action, and then they become developed. So it's, again, remember that it's use-dependent fashion. And the hard part is that the first 5 years, the brain is exploding with development. The connections that are being formed happen very fast. They kind of get embedded and solidified. And so that's why some of that early stuff that you have, those kind of core features of the first 5 years, they're really hard to change because the brain was just developing so fast. And as you get older, and you think about the biggest one is like language, for example. People always want to learn multiple languages. As an infant, your brain is just like, it's an open book, right? Nothing's really formed in there. So the information that comes in, like language, your brain is adapting to it, and your brain is ready for it because there's no connections, there's nothing there that's going to interfere with it. And so language becomes whatever your targeted language is, whether you're bilingual, in your home you speak, Spanish and English, or you just speak English, whatever language you hear. Again, you're hearing it repeatedly. Those synapses connect the different neurons, and now you have language development. You can speak Spanish, you can speak English. As an adult, you have all these other competing interests that are happening at the same time that you're trying to use different parts of your brain or strengthen different parts of your brain. And so you might feel like, I can't do this, or it's impossible because it's going against previously stored information. but you can. That's the point. Is like it just might take a little longer because it's going against, you know, information that's already there, but it's possible, and you can strengthen and you can develop those parts that weren't used before. The prefrontal cortex, like I said, it's the largest part. It sits up here and it's responsible for abstract thinking. So then that's your pros and your cons. So outweighing, you know, to do this or to do that. Your language actually is up there. The meaning you make over situations, reading, math, like you're talking also about like executive functioning, what culture means to you. Gosh, I mean, there's so many ways to describe what goes into the category of your prefrontal cortex. But just remember that this is the piece that takes the longest to fully develop. When you've experienced a trauma, right, the stress response system gets activated and sends out signals to the rest of your body that this situation over here is a threat. Now that so this is a threat, this is what you need to do to optimize your survival. Once that happens, that cortex piece gets shut down and you don't have access to it. After the trauma is over, that cortex piece comes back online, and that's where it starts to make meaning about what happened. When the brain, and like I said, develops in a use-dependent way. And so if you're your stress response system is constantly being activated, so it shifts your baseline, and so you're more sensitive to the threats in your environment. So think about it like this. You're a child, you're sitting in class, and at home, you know, your parents fight and argue all the time. There's domestic violence, it scares you, and so your stress response system kicks in, and you go hide, right? And you shut down, you dissociate until it's all over, and then you come back online, you join the family, what have you. So now you're in class, and your teacher starts yelling at another student, and this happens all the time. Ask any teacher who works in an environment where there's a lot of children who have trauma. They might yell at another student or raise their voice, not even, you know, again, this is subjective based on the child's experience, not your adult lens of your interpretation, if that makes sense. So this is a child. They have now a sensitized baseline. Their baseline has moved, and so they hear the raise in voice, and like I said in yesterday's video, that alert piece gets skipped over. So they're calm one moment and that gets skipped over. Now they're in the alarm stage. Actually, for folks who've experienced more trauma, they kind of live in like a low level of alert. They hardly ever are in that calm place. So they're already kind of more in that alert place. Alarm gets triggered, stress response system is triggered, and they have shut down. And even if the teacher has stopped yelling, they're still in their trauma response, and so they start to miss parts of what the teacher is saying. So how that impacts the cognition later on is that if, you know, little Johnny is constantly being triggered and they don't have any control over it, and teachers teaching them math, then they might not fully understand or fully learn all the math concepts and be able to move on. So this is where you get people like, oh, I'm really bad at math, or I can't do this. It's because they missed those learning opportunities because they were in their trauma response. And to optimize learning, you need to be in a calm state or even like a low level of alert. Once you move out, like I went over in the chart before, once you start moving higher in the arousal, you start going lower in your brain. And that's how people have certain gaps in like education and cortical functioning. So that's how trauma impacts brain development and the cortical functioning. What can you do about this, right? You've experienced repeated traumas throughout your life. My philosophy as a therapist is to use bottom-up techniques, not top-down approaches. So the bottom-up is basically the way I've ordered these videos, talking about the brainstem, then talking about the limbic system, and now talking about the cortex. Top-down approaches focus on using the cognitive piece to mediate or manage those lower parts. And so it's been my experience that if you target in the way the brain develops, so you start with that brainstem stuff first, that you get you optimize the healing process and doesn't take as long as maybe using those top-down features. So again, part of this is a personal preference. Everybody's different, but that's like my overall recommendation is, you know, when you're using these tools is to focus on the lower stuff first, then focus on the top part, and to find a therapist who does more somatic experiencing or bottom top approaches to therapy, as opposed to the top down, which is more of the CBT, psychoanalysis type therapies. So again, it's personal preference. I'm just stating my opinion. So anyway, here are my 5 recommendations that target specifically the cortex part of your brain. So here are my 5 recommendations to use your cortex, right, that cortical functioning, to help modulate some of those lower parts of the brain. So as I'm listing these recommendations for you, they're all about helping you to kind of figure out how to make meaning about your past abuse, how you can move forward, how you can manage or mediate those lower level functions. So the reactivity you experience when you get activated, being able to use that top part functioning to talk yourself down and to remind your body that you are safe and you're not under threat, and to do the deep breathing. So that's kind of where the cortex, that's the piece that the cortex is responsible for. And in order for it to come online, you need to be out of that alarm, fear, terror state and into an alert. And when you're in a calm state, you don't really need it. But recommendation 1 is journaling. I know a lot of people who I don't like to journal, blah 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 blah. So I'm going to say journaling / using the memo feature on your phone to record messages that can act kind of like a video blog or an audio blog, but just yeah, or even you can use like YouTube. I mean, the point of the journaling, the videoing, the audio recording, whichever, is that you are getting that energy out. You are talking about what's got you triggered. You're talking about how you're feeling. You're doing some of that processing and making meaning of things, and you're getting that energy out. So that's why I recommend journaling / audio recording / video recording, whichever works for you. The point is that that's the piece where you're like doing some of that processing stuff. Recommendation number 2 would be reading. If you enjoy reading, then find like buying self-help books, or when you start to become activated or triggered, maybe picking up a book that you like, that you find kind of calms you down, gives you a little bit of a distraction. That's another tool you can use to calm down and move out of that alert, out of your stress response system to a more, to a alert or calm state, and then you can go back and do some of that processing stuff afterwards. Another one. Let's see what we have here. This is for kids, huh? Music, I feel like music is recommendation number 3, music. But I also feel like music can be used for the brainstem stuff. It actually targets all of them. Same with dance. But I find that, and most clients find that music has a way of tapping into how you're feeling and giving you without words, right? Sometimes it can be really hard to know what you are feeling in that moment. You just feel very distressed, like that's all you can describe it as, is feeling distressed or overwhelmed. You can't really tap into like, I'm feeling afraid, why you're feeling afraid, etc., etc. But music can kind of not only help soothe you and calm you down, but it can also start to help you unpack some of that emotional stuff that's going on for you, and then you can do that processing later on. So music, I put it here because you can use it in multiple domains and it's very helpful. Recommendation number 4, I'm going to say also falls into the limbic system and cortex system functioning, and that's calling up a friend or a loved one. Help using that relationship to help calm you down, to help you process, to figure out what's going on for you. That's also incredibly important, and that's why having a support network is really big in terms of healing and recovery. And it taps into both that cortical function, because you have to actually be able to figure out which friend to call and tell yourself, right, you're engaging in the act of, okay, I know I'm frustrated, I know I'm overwhelmed, I'm freaking you out, blah 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 blah. Like, that's how you feel when you're activated, just kind of going a mile a minute. Being able to pick up a phone and reach out to somebody. The act of doing it is the cognitive piece, but as you're going through it, you're now getting more into like the relational limbic domain function of things. And my final recommendation, number 5, I'm gonna state generally art, doing some type of art, whether that's painting or drawing, but also you can, and this is something I love doing with my child clients, but also with my adult clients as well, if they're open to it, is creating a life book, or kind of jotting down, creating a life book where they can tell their story. And sometimes it might be too triggering to talk directly about their life, so maybe creating a story with fictional characters. But what always happens when you do any type of storytelling, even if it's fiction, parts of your real life kind of seep in. And again, this is a way of making meaning about and processing what happened, and what's going on for you, but while also calming the system down and regulating the body. All of these recommendations, they intertwine with the others, but they're no less valid. I just put them here in this category of things because people have more access to them. They also tend to be a little bit more socially appropriate. So you might be able to take a minute and, when you're at your desk and you're feeling overwhelmed, and, if you are in a little cubicle, you can, draw really quickly, or, when you're on your lunch break, you might go for a walk and put headphones on, listen to music. Like, those are things you can do anywhere, as opposed to like rocking in a rocking chair. Like, you might feel a little awkward as an adult going to the park and swinging on a swing. If you are sitting in a swivel chair at your office, I mean, nobody really pays too much attention if you like do like this, you just can't like swing all the way around. But that's just like another tip you can use in terms of getting some of that vestibular input. So I want to hear from you. Comment down below and let me know, what are some of the things that you like to do that calm you down when you become distressed? How do you know when you're being triggered into a trauma reaction? What are things that work for you to help you return to your baseline? Comment below, let me know. I want to hear from you. So remember, healing and recovery from trauma is possible. Take good care, and I'll see you in the next one.